fell asleep amid the flowers for a couple of hours on a beautiful day. Daydream.
I am your host, Stefanie Shore. Welcome to The Reset, where we hit the pause button, embrace who we are, reconnect with our purpose while rewriting our stories together with confidence. The Reset is excited to partner with Evolution Medicine. Evolution Medicine was founded by psychiatric nurse practitioner Diana Thompson and provides patient-centered psychiatric care, including comprehensive psychiatric evaluations, medication monitoring, women's mental health services, including and during pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. Telehealth appointments are available as well for your convenience. For more information or to schedule an appointment, visit www.evolutionmedicineapn.com. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today, Dr. Gautami Rao. She is one of the coolest people I know. She's my personal friend and confidant. And she is also a board-certified neurologist and epilepsy specialist with advanced training in neurophysiology, EEG, and sleep medicine. She completed her undergraduate studies at Colgate College, and then she was followed by medical school in India. She then returned to the U.S. for her neurology residency at the University of Medicine and Dentistry, and went on to complete a fellowship in clinical neurophysiology with a focus on EEG and sleep at Case Western Reserve University, and pursued epilepsy fellowship training at Yale University. While at Yale, she served as an assistant professor teaching medical students and neurology residents. After returning to New Jersey, Dr. Rao began practicing as an attending neurologist in several hospitals and is now the head of epilepsy at CarePoint Health Systems, a 3-hospital network in Hudson County. Dr. Rao has contributed to the field academically, including authoring a chapter on epilepsy in a Yale-published board exam review book, and she continues to mentor and teach medical students at Rowan University School of Osteopathic Medicine and Neurology residents within the CarePoint system. But more importantly, she is unapologetic, funny, and a beautiful, smart human being. She's also a proud single mother of 2 teenage sons, and she enjoys live music and is an active tennis and pickleball player, bringing that same energy and passion to her personal life as she does to her medical career. And like I said before, she's a treasured friend and colleague. So, Tammy, welcome. How is it to be here today?
After that introduction, it's a little embarrassing, but thank you for all of those high praises.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about a few things, and I wanted to get you on because, you know, every day I rely on you to help my brain feel better. Emotionally and mentally, I rely on you as a friend, a confidant, and someone who is extremely smart. So I wanted to find out more about how the brain works and what is it doing for us and against us. So what does the brain do for us?
I think, like you said, on a daily basis, you know, when we talk, we both make each other feel better, right? And that's because of the dopamine. So we all know about dopamine. It's the love neurotransmitter. It makes us feel good. It fuels our day. But I think the thing that people don't realize is that you can get dopamine and the same amounts of dopamine from different sources. And everybody gets their dopamine a different way. For example, like I'm an extrovert. So for me, I need to go out and be at a bar or listen to live music or be with my friends every day. I need that social interaction. That gives me dopamine and makes me feel good. But for introverts, they can only take so much of that, and then they have to reset, like you said, by being by themselves, and that gives them a certain amount of the feel-good neurotransmitters. So the brain really controls your mood, and it also controls, you know, your basic functions, but it's really important that we're aware of that because we can change the way we feel during the day. That's within our power.
That's amazing because whenever I think about the fact that I have to run out now and exercise, I always make a joke and I say to people, exercising for me is like, you know, fulfilling that dopamine. Like it's as good as an SSRI. I'll say like, oh, 30 minutes of exercise for me is equivalent to a dose of an SSRI. Do you think that it has those type of effects, like exercise and movement, like you said, going to dance and listen to live music? Is it really that good?
Absolutely. The most underrated forms of antidepressants are exercise, sunlight, social interaction. I work with a lot of people that are over 90. I would say that's half of my population. And, we have some great 95-year-olds who are like you and me. They have no dementia. They're happy. They're funny. And I found this in my practice. And there was a woman in California who did a big VA COOP study where she looked at 700 people over the age of 80, from 80 to up to over 100. And she found the same thing, that they have a couple of things in their lives that they do. They all walk.
Okay.
5-6 miles a day, or somewhere. They all have one drink, just one, not more than that. So we're in trouble because we don't just have one drink, so we're screwed. And they all have a great friend circle, and it's not just their family. They have friends. They're active. They have parties. They interact, and they have some sort of physical activity every day. So these are the things that I noticed as a pattern in my patients, and this woman actually did a study on it. And I think it's true at any age. And exercise is very important. It sort of regulates your body, and it makes you feel powerful, and it increases oxytocin, vasopressin, all of those other neurotransmitters as well. And if you ever noticed, after you exercise, you feel calmer.
I do.
So it is really important. We always tell our patients that don't want to go on antidepressants to definitely exercise. And sleeping 8 hours is very important too. Sleep deprivation messes up your brain and makes you feel depressed and anxious, and that's something that I think people don't realize.
It's very interesting, because my next question to you was going to be, what is neurophysiology? And I feel like maybe you're embracing some of that. And, I actually don't really know what that means. And I was looking at your...
The thing about neurologists is they like big words. So whoever invented all these books, they made up all these really fancy words. Neurophysiology is just a term for how the brain interacts with the body. So it's the brain waves. It's EEG, which we do for people who have seizures. And then it's a muscle test to see if somebody has, a herniated disc or something else like that. We give them a shock, and then we look at the waves going through the nerves. So that's what neurophysiology is. And there's also sleep medicine in there. So basically it's just a study of waves. And one is with sleep, one is with the muscles, and one is with the brain waves.
So we're talking about exercise and how it affects the brain. I was thinking about, there's so many different forms of exercise, and there's a lot of people doing extreme exercise and really testing their limits. And so it brings me to think about, how does chronic stress affect the body and the brain structure and function? And what are some things that we can do? I know we talked about exercise and social circles, so that was really good. What are some things we can do to help feed our brain, that if we're not able to exercise or be around other people, like you were talking about those introverts?
Well, meditation has been shown to change the way your brain functions, and a lot of how your brain functions is dependent on pathways. So, they always say that if you do something for 2 weeks, it becomes a habit, and that's because your neural pathways actually change. So if you meditate, they did functional MRI studies. So functional MRI is an MRI, which is a picture of the brain, which basically looks at, you're awake, and it takes a picture of your brain, and it shows what your brain is doing when you do an activity like tapping your finger or talking. And they looked at people who meditated, and it showed that all of the areas of the brain that secrete happy chemicals are activated when you meditate. And they showed that the brains of people that meditate for 4 or 5 years are significantly different than ones that don't.
In what ways?
Well, there's more blood flow to the thalamus and the frontal lobe and other parts of the brain that are involved in releasing these good chemicals.
Is there a certain time of the day that it matters if you meditate? For me, I'm not a meditator.
I don't meditate. I hate it because I can't sit still. But then again, I've been told I should, so
Well,
I will
this is
try.
why we're friends, right?
Right.
Because we, instead of meditating, we talk to each other
We
in
talk
the
to each
car.
other on the phone 10 times a day. But, right. So I think I think everyone has to find something that works for them. But I think that practice of being still, of focusing on something other than yourself, there's something about that calms your nervous system. Because, the nervous system is sympathetic and parasympathetic. So the sympathetic system was first, well, through evolution, if you believe in evolution, it's because, we had to survive. So we have this fight or flight mechanism where if we're in danger, we sort of like have a sense of urgency, our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up, and we sort of come to action, right? And that's a survival mechanism so we can prevent getting killed by animals or whatever. But what happens in a lot of people with anxiety is, and I have anxiety, and I had a panic attack this weekend. You know why, right? Boy trouble. It's always the boys. And I had a panic attack. And what happened? I was at my son's game, and all of a sudden my heart started beating fast, and I had to leave the game. I almost threw up. I was not in control of that because my body interpreted the loss of a loved one as someone trying to attack me and kill me. So what meditation does is it teaches your body to not respond to those, to rework your pathway so that you don't go into that state, so that you're able to control that sympathetic system.
Wow.
And
Okay.
and channel it in a more productive way. And I think over time, if you practice the art of meditation, and I'm not talking about yoga, I'm talking about meditation, I think that you really can be more in control of your anxiety. And some people say that you can be in control of your depression as well.
I think that's a great thing because a lot of people recently have brought up trauma and trauma response, and a lot of people are talking about, especially in social media, about how do we heal our trauma and sharing your story and not letting your trauma dictate your future, and how do we do that? And, we all want to hopefully better ourselves for our children and the future generations. So we speak up, and I think we've made a lot of progress with women's rights and allowing voices to be heard. And that's the whole reason why I do this podcast, is because I didn't want an untold story. And I think that's really brave for you to say that you had a panic attack this weekend. I've spent a lot of my life making sure that I don't do any of those things. And I scream in cars, maybe, and I'll cry in my car, I'll scream in my car. And sometimes what I'll do is silently actually go into my head and remember something that was very traumatic to me to comfort me. And I don't think I've ever said that out loud. Like, I will go back to a time that I slept in the subway to comfort me through a hard time so I can get through it, rather than be outwardly
How does that
panic.
help you?
Because I think to myself, I've had it so much worse and I'm free now. So I think of that younger self that was sleeping and cold in the subway, and I feel warm because I feel like maybe I've suffered so much that I now have the ability to give and heal other people, because it's never going to be that bad. I don't know. I've been trying to figure that out.
Well, you give yourself perspective. You see, okay, I've had things that have happened that are so much worse, so in comparison, this is okay.
Right. But sometimes we need to allow ourselves to, be who we are and go through emotions. Is there any negative effects to suppressing that and not letting it out and just tucking it in? Like, do people who have trauma react differently to people or their friends, become misunderstood because of it?
Well, people with trauma, their brains are different. They have more cortisol release. There have been studies saying their hippocampus, which is the area of the brain where you store long-term information and you acquire information, is damaged. And they do tend to have more release of cortisol. So they do respond differently. It changes your brain. So I think that they're not aware of what they're doing. It just sort of happens.
So it's funny. I heard myth, and I've heard it before, that stress can literally shrink your brain. Is that true, though? Is that a myth, or is that the truth?
Well, I don't know if they've done, I'm sure they have done studies of chronic cortisol release, which is what stress is.
Mm-hmm.
I think it reduces your memory, ability to acquire new information, and of course it causes mood changes, and it affects sleep patterns. I'm not sure if it actually shrinks your brain. The one thing that does shrink your brain is alcohol, though.
Yes,
A lot.
Yeah.
It shrinks your brain tremendously. Not marijuana, alcohol, and of course dementia. People with chronic cortisol release, I think in general, tend to develop diabetes. They tend to develop hypertension. They tend to be more predisposed to stroke. So it's really important that we all control our stress levels. But I don't think anyone really, I personally think they should have something in middle school and high school. I think all people should be taught this from a young age, because we live in a very stressful world and most of us don't have the tools, myself included, on how to manage these situations.
One of the things I was thinking about as you're talking about this with being, schools and starting at a younger age is, and we've talked about this a lot, having children who are in school and playing sports. There's a lot of different ideas in this world about whether or not everybody gets a trophy, or if, there should be one winner, and that type of stress with competing. Like my son, he, was playing baseball at the age of 7. And, that's a lot of stress with, coaches who are really into it, travel teams. So how do we incorporate that? Because there's a whole part of society that says, if you give everybody a participation trophy, you're making them into a pussy, Excuse my language, but it's true. It's like, they're like, oh, that's bullshit. Like, not everybody should get a trophy. And then there's the other half that says they're participating. They need to understand that it takes time and growth and is there one way better than another? Does there always need to be one winner, or should everybody get a trophy?
Well, that's
a big
you want
debate.
children to be trained for life outside of your house, right? Because eventually they're going to hopefully leave your house and function in the real world.
Please.
I think that, right?
Kidding.
We're all crossing our
Love
fingers,
you guys.
please.
If you're listening.
Love you, but GTFO. So the thing is my opinion is, and this is not a popular opinion, but in life there's winners and losers. And I think that everyone has strengths.
Right.
And I don't think that giving a child a prize for participating and not being the best is really giving them a misconception of what life is like. If you work
agree.
hard, there's some things you can work hard at and be mediocre. There's some people can work 12 hours a day and just be mediocre. That's life. And I think that's why I love sports. My kids are both basketball players, and one is amazing, and so is the other one. They both have different skills, but they have learned through sports what it means to lose, what it means to be playing against people that are much better than them, what it means to be playing against people that are from another planet that can jump 12 feet high and 7 feet tall, but they're still okay with themselves. And I think that's what life is about, because we live in a world of comparison. We're on Instagram, hello, and we have to teach our children that comparison is there, but you have to be confident in yourself and know that you're the only and best version of yourself. And I think that if you give everybody a trophy, that you rob children of the ability to function in the real world. And that's why the millennials are the way they are. They can't function in the real world.
It is really hard
They
to
can't,
see.
they don't want to be criticized. They don't want to be taught, because their whole lives they grow up being told that you're amazing, you're better than everybody else.
Right.
And that's not always true. You're not always better than everybody else, but you can still be a happy person and have a happy life.
And there's a thin line, to know when you're crossing the line with making the child tough and tough it up and suck it up, and this is what we go through. And then when they really are crying out for help and do need support, or, maybe psychiatric care, or someone to lean on it. There's a very thin line between, listen, this is the way it is and this is what we do. So I think it's a really hard thing to do, is number one, to parent while trying to figure out your own brain, and also, trying to help other people. So adults, like we're talking about, are set in their ways and they have all these ideas. Why is it so hard for adults to learn something new? When I was doing research to do educational programs for my practice, I was trying to figure out ways to get like adults to eat healthier.
But what age group are you talking about?
I'm talking about 30 to 70. I know
So
it's
there's
a big
different,
range.
the acquisition of information is much easier when you're under the age of 50. Unfortunately, somebody like me who's 56, I'm going downhill. I'm not going to be able to learn how to use the remote control. No, I'm just joking.
I hope so.
But it's easier. Your brain acquires information much more rapidly until you're 50 or 55, and then the acquisition goes down, but your retention of information is fine. So it depends what age group you're talking about, whether they have underlying dementia, whether they have health
That's a good
issues.
point.
There's many different factors. It's hard to, make a broad statement like that. But you can acquire new information. It just depends on when you start and what your medical problems are and, if you have cognitive difficulties.
So it's not just a resistance issue. There's an actual brain process happening.
Well, people in general, older people who resist learning new things is because they know they're not able to. So they know that, we have the curmudgeon-y people who, like the older people, they don't want. It's usually because they know, I'm not going to remember this. I don't want to do it because it's going to make them feel bad about themselves. But usually people in the younger age group, they will jump at the chance to learn something new. And they're able to do it if they try, because your brain is just functioning at a more efficient level. Now, nowadays, what we're trying to do is we're trying to see how we can make our brain function efficiently until we're 80, 90, or 100, right? We have, the NAD stuff that you see on TikTok, exercise, doing crossword puzzles. We're looking at some village in Japan where they eat seaweed and rice and trying to figure out why do these people live to 110 and they're still cranking it, and why are we falling apart? So I think that's what I think that's what this millennium is about, trying to defeat the aging process.
Yes, I hear a lot about defeating the aging process.
So I think we're, better than our parents, right?
Right.
Because we exercise, and exercise is key in keeping you young, keeping your mental health young. I think we're all working longer, which is important, right? We're not retiring at the age of 50 anymore. Or 60, 55. I laugh because, I'm 56 and I can be in the active living 55 and older, but that's because 55 was the age of retirement in the 60s. That's why, we think maybe there was a decline.
Right.
So I think, and I know everyone makes fun of pickleball. Listen, I used to hate pickleball. I thought I was going to start a campaign because I'm a tennis player and they were taking over our courts. And then I couldn't find anyone to play tennis with, so I started playing pickleball. They're going to do studies saying that pickleball reduces dementia. I'm telling you, I've gotten my ass handed to me by many a 70-year-old. All right?
Agree,
They
yeah.
are phenomenal. And I think that there's something about that game where it activates your cerebellum, the back of your brain, which really kind of goes downhill after 50. And it activates all the different strategy forming parts of your brain, and it's social. You're outside, you're getting vitamin D, and, people are doing this. The older people, 70, 80-year-old people are doing this 4 or 5 hours a day. And you're going to see that that's going to be, if we study that and we can reproduce that with other things, you can see that's part of the anti-aging process too.
It's very interesting to talk about that because I think even our healthcare system is going to have to make a lot of adjustment. People are living a lot longer. They're using their brain more. They're cognitively in sound and aware. I had a patient tell me recently that he wasn't going to travel anymore because when he tried to travel internationally, after 75, they wouldn't rent him a car. And
in other countries?
in other countries.
Where, in Europe?
Yes. And he also really after 75 he could not get insured, and he had to convince them and do all sorts of stuff. And I heard it multiple times from multiple people. Also, what I heard
That's not the case in this country, is it?
It might be. We'll have to check it out.
Wow.
But I also heard that you can't do excursions over 80 on cruises because of risk factors. You really?
Well, I mean, there's plenty of
but there's some amazing
30-year-olds
people.
that shouldn't be on excursions
Exactly.
either.
So these drunk kids are out there like breaking their back, breaking their neck, having these crazy accidents on jet skis. But like someone who's 80, because they're 80, they can't go on excursions. So I literally have had multiple people tell me that. And I want to be able to, give hope to, like, people dismiss the elderly and the older population, like, oh, he's old, like, look at this person, they've aged out. There's ageism even in social media and movies and everything. But really, like, all of these advances that you're talking about are really going to make the population healthier, longer, mentally sound. And are we keeping up as a society to give everybody what they need? Like, they're cutting off exams at certain ages, like, oh, we don't need to now give you like maybe a colonoscopy because you're a certain age. Like, there's so many cutoffs with older adults in our system right now.
See, I think as a neurologist, I'm seeing the opposite.
Oh, good.
A lot of our patients, most of my patients are over 80. I mean, when I see a 70-year-old, I say, oh, you're young, because for us, I have 5 97-year-old women right now in the hospital, and they're great. They had a stroke, but before this week, they were fine. They were cooking, they were cleaning. I don't think our healthcare system and our housing facilities are ready for all these older people.
That's
because
what I mean.
Their mind is fine, but their body's falling apart. So that's the problem that we're having, and a lot of people don't have family they can stay with. But I think most people that age well, they've done things on their own to make themselves that way. They don't drink. They don't drink excessively. They don't smoke, most of them. They maintain a healthy weight. They exercise. Like I said, they have a social infrastructure, and they have a purpose in life. And, despite the genetic stuff that could happen to them, they're doing this themselves. They have that secret sauce that they know that they have to, do, and so if more people followed their example, we'd have even more elderly, but we would have a problem because where are we going to put all these people whose bodies are not working but their minds are fine?
Right.
And you're right, they can't drive. We have Uber now, but then, they're vulnerable because someone could harm them. So yeah, there are a lot of changes that need to be done. But I think you're going to see in the next 40 years that most people will live over the age of 80, especially us, because we're taking care of ourselves. We're exercising. Most of us don't smoke.
Yeah, I think that's very exciting. I'm excited by the prospect of living a long time, and I see, lots of pictures recently of people celebrating birthdays over 100, and it's really exciting. I was also thinking about who we surround ourselves with, like you were just talking about, that really matter. And you and I both grew up in Queens, right?
Yes, we
What
did.
part of Queens did you grow up in?
Bayside.
Bayside. So I'm from Jackson Heights.
Right.
And, cultural shifts are happening. We're having this podcast out of New Jersey. We're in Kennelan. And, it's definitely a different dynamic. How does culture play into the brain and how we view things? And, we're mobile. Everybody travels. People move across the country. Do you find there's more because of social media, more of a shift of easier adjustments, or is it just as hard with culture shifts? Because like our culture is so much different going from urban to suburban, right?
You mean how do elderly people, how are they looked at in different cultures, or?
No, just in general, like people and their mental and their brain health, just like with the adjustment of going from like being urban to suburban, and the dynamic of culture in their lives.
I think whenever someone moves from an environment they're used to a different environment, it's actually good for your brain because your brain has to adjust. But then you have to see if the stress that's in the new environment is too much for that person to handle. So I think it just depends on each person and what they're capable of, and what their personal ecosystem needs. I mean, every person is different. Some people want to live in the city and they've lived in the beach their whole life, and when they live in the city, they're happier. So I think it's whatever makes a person happier is probably a better environment for them.
That's true. And a lot of people go through many different lives within their lives, right? Like that's where I kind of, talk about the pivot and the reset in your life where you're not the same person you might have been 10 years ago, not just because of age, but because of life changes, marriage, divorce, family tragedy. How has things in your life made you reset? Like, what do you feel in your life has changed your way of thinking or the way you live your life, and how has that developed over time?
I mean, I think my divorce was the biggest reset. I had to learn how to be by myself, and a lot. Now I'm used to it. I'm comfortable with it. I had to do most things by myself, and work and manage that. So that was a big shift for me.
Yeah, divorce is definitely something. I mean, it's more than 50% of the population gets divorced. I was, laughing at my kids were giving me some statistics about divorce, and my son was like joking, and as I'm getting married again, and he's like, hey, 70% of second marriages fail, and I'm like, what? I'm like, not mine. I think we all would like to think that everything's going to work out. And I definitely, feel confident and happy. But how does divorce affect the brain and the family dynamic changing? Because, when we shift where we go and, I can't imagine what it's like for my kids who have to pack up. Like, they're going to be packing up tomorrow and going to their dad's, and then they have to reassimilate and adjust. What's something they can do or I can do to help protect their brain health while they're going through this,
Well, I think the least amount of changes is the best, but of course it's unavoidable, and you just try to reproduce the same amount of love and environment that they have at your house and at your ex-husband's, which they do. They have a happy, loving father, and they have you. So, and over time they'll adjust. So I think there's not much you can do, but I think it does make them more resilient, and they have coping mechanisms, especially Avery. She has, she loves going back and forth, right? So I know that we initially did a little bit of that, but they ended up staying mainly with me because my ex moved so far away. But I think out of the two of my children, it's interesting. They were both young. They were cognizant before I got divorced, so they were 3 and 1. So they didn't really understand. They didn't really remember their dad living at home. But the older one, over time, has adjusted poorly to the divorce, whereas the younger one is much better adjusted. And they experience the same thing. So it's interesting. I think it depends on what kind of person you are and what your protoplasm is and how you are as a person. I mean, there's certain things, and I tell Stefanie this all the time, like, you're a great mom. Don't blame yourself for the way your kids are, because I think a person is just born a certain way, and we have to stop blaming ourselves as parents that we did something to make them that way. I think people are just who they are, and they react the way they do.
Right.
So,
I mean, you could have, I'm a testament to this, and you are too. I mean, I have 3 children. You have 2. And each child,
but each of my one children is like 3 children, so I actually have 6.
Oh, you have 6, okay. and don't forget how we add animals to this. Like,
I don't have animals. Dogs. I would kill them. God bless you. Good for you. I don't have animals. I don't have plants. I have dishes in the sink, which sometimes get washed, but
I actually feel like
I don't know
my
how
brain
you do it with your dogs.
I don't know either, honestly. I think I wanted all these things to fulfill me. That's where my brain kept telling me. They say sometimes your brain is bigger than your mouth when you eat, right? The same thing.
Well, we need to study your brain, because she is the master manifester. I mean, you should go to Vegas and you should sit there and gamble, because
right?
you think of something and then you make it happen. It's amazing.
Thank you. I actually did this very recently when I was at a Tricky Tray. That morning I was on a live show, and I said, today I looked at my vision board and I said, I am lucky everything goes well for me. I am lucky everything goes well for me. And I paid 4 tickets, $300, and I won a Tricky Tray for $300 worth of gift certificates. And I really think I manifested it. I really, really felt it. I'm like, I'm lucky everything works out for me. Yeah, I
Scary.
think manifesting is really good for the brain. What do you think about that? Because I tell myself all the time, like, and I have like this extreme gratitude in me that I feel like, I mean, this is amazing. I'm here talking to you. Like, this is what I love to do every day is like chat, and I get to have you on and have people learn about the brain, and it's all exciting to me. So I feel like manifesting for me is kind of like my meditation.
Well, I think that you have a different type of brain.
Okay.
And I'm serious because I've known her for a long time, and I tell my colleagues about you because I don't have the ability to do that. It's not because I don't want to. It's kind of like some people can dunk, right? Like my little, so some people can't. Doesn't matter how much you try, you just can't. You are that way. You are a mental dunker. Like, I don't know how you do it.
Mental dunker. I love that.
She just does it. She's like, I'm getting married in a year. Boom, she finds this amazing guy. She's getting married. Me, yeah, not so much. But what I'm saying is that you have that ability. Now, for you, it's natural. Can other people teach themselves to be that way? I don't know. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But you have that inherent ability to do it.
Well, I mean, like, I was recently on Flix Pop Radio, and we're talking about drama, comedy, and, all these movies. I mean, these movies that we love always make us believe in, romance and that happily ever after. And even recently I was watching on Netflix Younger, and they were going to hire an author to write a book, and they're like, yeah, we're modern, so we're not going to do a happy ending. And at the last minute, they decided not to hire that person. So I wonder how much pop culture and growing up and watching movies influenced me, because I love movies, and I remember some of the major things I watched on like TV or in a movie made me think, this doesn't have to be my life, what's happening right now. The trauma that was going on when I was a kid, I'm like, I can go get that. I believed it. So do you think is it a combination maybe?
I think that there's a lot of things that the brain can do that we don't understand yet. And I think some people can tap into it. I think we all should be able to, but it's a practice. It's also a meditation, what you're doing. And to train your brain to be that way, to bring those positive things that you believe in into your life. I think we can all do it, but there's varying levels of ability there. And every religion and culture talks about this. Christianity says, thank God for what you already have. It's sort of like you're thanking him for what you want, and it's coming into your life. Hinduism has this. Buddhism has this. So it is a real thing, but we have to sort of tap into it. And you can, I've had it in my life briefly but you have to believe without a doubt. It's kind of like the Matrix, You have to believe that wall is not there. And humans I don't believe we can cure disease in our own body at this time, but I do believe the brain-body connection is more significant than we realize. And we can project our dreams into the world and bring them to us, definitely. And your inspiration was rom-coms, right? Mm-hmm. So, my inspiration is you and what you do.
Aww.
So, yeah, I mean, I think, I get very depressed sometimes. I think, wow, look at Stefanie, look what she's doing. So, should we teach kids to meditate? Should we teach kids to be in control of their mind? Absolutely. Kids are not in control of their mind. They're looking to social media, looking at Instagram, looking at drugs, looking at alcohol, looking at other people. But really, what people don't realize is you have your own ability to control your own mind and affect your life positively.
It's interesting. You say that to me, but you really inspired me, because when I saw you, every time I would see you, you would look me in the eye, you would say hi to me, you would get to know me, you would literally be so cool and shoot the shit. And at that time I was a nurse, and now I'm a nurse practitioner, but I wanted to be like you. And I'm like, you're very approachable. You're very approachable. Like, you're so real. You're so authentic. And you're fun to be around.
Thank you. It's unusual for people.
Do you think humor also, like, is
very
inborn?
Of course, yeah. Your sense of humor. I mean, I know lots of people that I'm around that don't have a sense of humor. It's just a way of looking at life, right? So I had to develop a sense of humor because I was, made fun of. I was beaten up for being Indian. I'm an 80s kid. There were 5 Indians in the entire country when I moved here. And,
They were all on my block.
people were like, and I have this
Jackson Heights.
insane name that nobody, including you, can pronounce.
No. I'm like your friend
So-
for like 12 years. I can't
Right.
freaking
Right.
pronounce
I had
your name.
to change my
Poor
name.
guy.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I used to get the shit kicked out of me in Queens, New York. People would chase me, and so then when I moved to New Jersey, I had a thick New York accent, and so people didn't want to sit with me, and so I would sit alone. I would sit at the lunch table, and people would come and sit down, and I literally had 10 seconds to entertain them and make them stay and sit with me. Otherwise, so I would say something funny. I had to develop a sense of humor. Otherwise, people would get up and leave. And, sometimes people would say, oh, you know what? You're funny. I'm going to have lunch with you. You're really weird looking. You have a weird name, but I'm going to sit with you because you entertain me. So I had to develop a sense of humor.
Is that like a
I didn't have a
coping
choice.
mechanism?
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
it's funny you say
It's
that
an important,
because-
it's one of the best defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
We know that in psychiatry. But I had no choice. Otherwise, I would be sitting by myself and I'd be so embarrassed.
Well, some people will do that. A lot of
But
kids
if
will do
you
that.
are a pretty person, a popular person, maybe you don't have to develop that sense of humor. Like I look at my kids. My kids are popular. They dress well. They're the cool kids. They have a good sense of humor, but it's not something that they hang on to fiercely. It's not something that, they sort of know that they're cool and they're accepted. I never knew that.
But everyone who looks at you, this is in my, my opinion is like, you're a neurologist. You're not,
I know, but
that
that's just what I
alone
do
just
for
makes
work.
you, yeah, but how did you get there? Like, how did you have the discipline to do that?
I don't know. It was weird. And like you said, you manifested what you're doing now. I sort of, when I was in college, I decided I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be on TV. And I was on TV. I was on this thing called Ask NBC News, like way back when. I'm sure some people, older people, have heard of it. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a journalist. And then somehow I just gave up. And then I decided to do this. And I believed in myself. And I just, went to school in India. And I just did it. I just, that's what I wanted to do. I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, sometimes it's a lot harder to not know what you want to do.
It wasn't easy. I failed once or twice. I still make mistakes, but this is definitely what I should be doing. I feel that this is what I was put here to do.
I think that's an amazing feeling when you figure out this.
That's
is
the
what
only
I'm
part of
meant
my
to
life
do.
that makes sense, but at least that's the one part that makes sense.
That's a good part, though.
It's the only thing I know how to do. I'm lost as a parent, lost in relationships, but this is the one thing where I feel like, okay, I walked in the hospital, I know what I'm doing. I wish I had that ability in my life, but I don't.
So yeah, that's definitely something that happens. A lot of people is that they have the ability in their professional life to, be on and switch their brain to, be that great person to be able to be relied on, professional, and then the minute they leave, they turn into a different person. How do you keep them both aligned? Like, I think about this a lot. I want to kind of meet and match because I think it's a little bit of theatrics, and sometimes when I'm at work, I'm my best self, and I'm great with patients, I'm great with my colleagues, my coworkers, and then I just walk in and I see this big mess, and even if I'm right, I just turn into this down person. Is there a way to mesh the worlds together, you think?
Well, when we're at work, we can't be unprofessional. We can't be affected by what's around us. But at home, we can relax and, sort of get caught up in the moment, be more emotional, right? So that's why. But, you can put up a facade at home and at work, but I don't think that's healthy. Right?
Yeah, especially the culture now, especially with COVID and everything that happened and people working from home. Do you think that's negatively impacted them? Because there's no accountability, right? Like when you're at home and you're just on calls. We work face to patient facing jobs, but other people who are stuck behind their computer, do they lack more coping mechanisms, more skills?
I don't think they lack coping mechanisms. I think that loneliness has become an epidemic because we don't have that work family. We don't have that interaction. We just have us and the computer, which is not healthy for anybody.
Right, yeah. So I wanted to ask you a question since we've been talking a lot about being parents and everything. I know when I had kids, like I said, I felt like I was totally rewired. And people talk a lot about brain fog, but do you think there's mom fog? Is that a real thing that's happening? Like,
Well, are
what
you
happens,
talking about as soon as a baby's born, or are you
like
talking about a couple
neurologically
years
after
later?
you have a baby? What's really happening to your mom brain? Like people are like,
Well-
oh, ever since I had a baby, I've just had this mom fog. And, how long does it
Well, in the
last?
first, it depends on when the baby starts sleeping through the night. So, and it depends when you start sleeping through the night. So, you're experiencing chronic sleep deprivation as in the newborn stages in the first couple of weeks. In addition, you're experiencing intense hormonal changes. Your estrogen, your progesterone levels are completely altered. And there's something called the HPA axis where the estrogen and progesterone affect cortisol. So you have massive amounts of cortisol being released because now you have to keep this little thing from dying every second of every day.
This little thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I felt. And hopefully you have, 3-4 people helping you. So the more help you have, the more sleep you have right after the baby's born, the less cortisol is released, the less anxious you feel, and the more sleep you get. So a lot of women don't have that. A lot of men don't have that community that helps them. There's a reason why in other cultures, Africa, India, the entire family travels to a newborn's house to help the parents.
Right.
Because they know that makes the parents recover quickly. But we have an isolated community, culture in this country, so it's not that. But that's what mom fog is. It's a combination of depression, sleep deprivation, anxiety, and this constant fight or flight reaction that I have to keep this baby alive. So and. There's a lot of problems that can happen the first couple of weeks. Jaundice, not eating, not feeding, throwing up, colic, So that chronic cortisol release causes short-term memory loss. It causes confusion. And that's what the fog is. Right.
I even think I have it sometimes as the kids get older because I have so many things to do.
Absolutely. The more distracted you are, the more forgetful you become.
Yeah, I think it's definitely hard to separate yourself from being a mom and then being an individual and going back and forth through the roles and, where do I belong? What am I allowed to do? What should I be doing for my children? How should they see me? What a mom is defined as in our society right now.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the most difficult job in the world, in my opinion, being a parent.
I think so, too. How do you think men process it versus women? Do they get, dad fog?
No, because men sleep. Men don't take things as seriously as we do. We take everything very personally and I know your pre-questions. I saw your question. I hope you don't mind. I looked at some of them. And so what's the difference between men's and women's brains? The difference is there is a difference. Equal intelligence, that's not the thing. But a man's brain is a little bit bigger and a woman's brain is bigger in the cortical function. So we experience emotion in a little different way than men do. We take everything. During the birthing process, we are giving birth. Our body is being destroyed, deformed. We've typically gained a tremendous amount of weight. We're disfigured and we're cut open sometimes. Our hormones are raging. Men don't have any of that.
This is so true.
They have the empathy. Well, no, I mean, I think it's also a helpless feeling because as a man, you're seeing your loved one go through this and you're just sitting there like an idiot, like, okay, and you want to help, but a lot of times you can't experience what they're experiencing. And so they don't go through the hormonal changes that we go through. So they perceive things in a more rational way. And men are problem solvers. They're fixers. So they fix things. I remember when I was married, I used to be on call. I would have to leave 7 a.m, come back at 7 p.m. And I was married and, I had the 2 boys and my ex would be like, all right, I'll see you guys later. Make sure, you do this, that, and the other. I come home. Nobody's wearing clothes. Everybody's wearing diapers and no shirts. And the place is a mess. And there's some sort of apparatus to feed the kids bottles that he worked. But you know what? I used to get so pissed off. And later, I remember my ex and I are friends now. And I was like, you know what? That was so brilliant because you didn't put the clothes on because you knew they would get them dirty. So why create more laundry?
Right.
And you yourself didn't wear any shirt or clothes because you thought, okay, I'm going to get dirty too. So they approach things in a more practical way than we do. That's why I think they're immune from all the nonsense that we go through.
Right.
And they also have this sense that, okay, you know what, unless they suffer from anxiety and depression, that everything's going to be fine. We'll figure it out, right? I mean, I think
So I
that's
just want to
what it
get
is.
this straight. You did say that we have bigger brains, right?
Bigger's not always better. No, men have bigger brains.
I thought you said women did.
No,
Oh,
no.
Come on,
No,
Tammy.
men have bigger brains.
All right.
Doesn't mean you know how to use it, but yeah, they have bigger brains.
Oh, man, I love talking to you. I could talk to you forever.
But I think the difference between men and women are the hormones. That's the difference. And, you know, if you take a trans person who's having hormonal changes, they might feel very similar to a person who is a woman and is having the same level of hormones.
You know, as you're talking about this, I'm like, why don't we teach at all in school about how men think and how women think, so that when they meet each other and they decide to live together and have a bunch of kids, they understand that there's major hormonal shifts.
Well, do you
and
remember
changes.
that? Oh, God, you're so young. You're a baby. Okay, so us old people know that there's after school specials. And one of them was...
I was out doing the after school special. I'm just kidding.
now you're just bragging. Just
Just kidding.
relax, baby. So they had this, and they used to do this in schools, not in my school, where they would have, it was a home ec class, and I forget what it was called, but they would pair a boy and a girl together,
Right.
and they would give them an egg, and they said you have to like protect this egg as if it was a baby for like the next 2 weeks.
Right.
We don't do that anymore, obviously.
But I don't remember doing
because
that.
everything is offensive to everybody now, so you can't do that. So, but yeah, I mean, they used to do that. We need to bring that stuff back.
We do. We really
Life
do.
skills,
Life skills.
you know?
There should
Home
just be-
ec, you know? Like learn how to make lasagna.
That would be good.
Learn how to like feed yourself. So, but yeah, we don't have that anymore.
We don't. So as we come to a close, I just wanted to ask you, do you have any last thoughts that you want to share with the audience about anything about you, about the brain, about anything you could think of?
I think just that we should all be meditating more. We should all be understanding that we are the master of our universe, and try not to lose your confidence or your respect for your own life when you see social media and other things, because you have to realize that you can change your life at any point.
You really can. And I want to add to that, to have kick-ass friends who show up for you, who come to your podcast.
It's very important.
Who meet you, whether it's in the morning or
Buy
the
you
night.
free drinks.
Buy you a few drinks, go to the gym with you, hang out with
It's
you.
extremely important. Loneliness is an epidemic in this country, and we need to address that because it's causing a lot of problems. And it can be solved by just reaching out.
And there's even just like little steps you can do. You may not be like the ultimate manifester, but you might get curious by, like you said, by me who manifests, or by you who has this extreme sense of humor and discipline. So we could all find like a common ground.
Yeah, and I think we
help
should
each other.
also, call that friend that maybe, is an introvert and you haven't heard from in a while. Go out with them. Like I call people all the time because I'm in the car a lot. It's important because, when you do that, that person will call you at your time of need. And they don't have to be on your wavelength all the time. They might be dorky, or they might be, a bookworm or something else. But my kids always make fun of me. They're like, God, your friends they're all so different. They're all so weird. And I'm like, yeah, but there's something beautiful about each of them. And I think we need to be more curious about each other and have more of a community. We're also in our little world, in our little boxes, and are working from home. And we need to reach out more. And I think that is going to help us as a country.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to The Reset with Stefanie Shore. It's brought to you by Evolution Medicine. And Evolution Medicine provides patient-centered psychiatric care and can be reached at www.evolutionmedicineapn.com, or you can call 973-936-8108.